uh, share the challenges from the perspective of humanitarian localization, from the questions based on um, uh, in this COVID-19, um, and we are looking at the Sentai framework from government donors and other stakeholders. So the questions that we often have to ask ourselves, that are we just shifting the risk, or should we also look into shifting the power in empowering our local civil society, our local communities, to be better managing, the pandemic and other disaster associated. Four of our countries in the region, in the Pacific region, while we were trying to deal with COVID-19, we had a cyclone. And so that was even more challenging to some of our organizations. But in terms of a civil society organization perspective, one of the most challenging is the service delivery, in terms of uh, existing projects that we had continued to be had been working on and had been pushed back because of the COVID. Um, and then we see that if we are not careful, that some of these priorities, issues that we had been working in our existing projects are being pushed back. And if we don't speak out on those issues, and that's what I was referring earlier, that we have to also recognize that there are some of the old normal that we need to still advocate for. Um, Issues like climate change, for example, issue like seabed mining, extracting industry, violence against women, some of those key issues that we have to be mindful that we don't lose track of those things. Because a lot of times that we have seen, COVID-19 is just like taking up most of the platform, most of the spaces. And we had also seen, um, in terms of the civil society, we all know that that the it would affect our funding stream, uh, because most of the countries that are supporting donors that are supporting civil society work will be affected one way or another in the long run, because of the impact of the economic downturn of the COVID-19. So we really have to be challenge ourselves in terms of competing priorities. Everyone now is going to be competing to the same pot of fund. How do we make sure that we stay relevant to the work that we do? And that is something that we know that we will be challenged by that in terms of the funding criterias, priorities that the donors will decide where that funding would go. One of the major things that I would like to emphasize, that we have to be quite um, uh, clear in terms of, don't just look at the recovery of COVID-19. Don't just look at humanitarian perspective of it. We need to follow the money. We need to make sure that we have a strong voice from civil society to call upon our leaders, holding them accountable, having our governance institutions, have call on accountability and transparency in the process. And we have seen that across the Pacific, and I'm sure in the other regions. ADB, World Bank, and other multinational organizations are putting in a lot of money to support COVID-19. We have to make sure that we follow that. If we are not, then we, um, and we are operating in an environment where we, government can take uh, those funds and use it on um, other priorities. And then we still see the gaps in terms of our social protections, which is being exposed by COVID-19. We have seen government taking advantage of those limitations in terms of engaging civil society. because of the state of emergency, the lockdown, limitations of mobility, all of that are being used for safety mechanisms for the citizens, but at the same time, it should not undermine the capacity of civil society to be part of the conversation, finding solutions. And we have seen, certain negotiations on trade, for example, that are going during this pandemic period. Uh, that is with no consultations from civil society. The whole principle of our democracy, due diligence, all of that are happening in an environment where civil society shrinking space is at the forefront. And so when we're looking at our national budget process, for example, a lot of our government, this is the time for that budget process. And we have heard the speakers before talking about prioritizing some of the local actors and the local civil society to respond to the pandemic. If the policies is not reflected in the budget, then there is no way we can see those um, responses making sense directly to minorities who really need that kind of support. In terms of our judgment, I'll just share some of the work that we have done in partnership with the Humanitarian Advisory Group, lessons from previous responses, and findings from some of researchers in the Pacific. We have 5 key judgment recommendations. One is strengthen the partnership. This really key that we have to step out and make sure that we partner, adapt the policy in the system, the processes to accommodate the new way of work, fund local and national actors to support locally led responses. And that's what I was talking about in terms of the budget process, making sure that we are part of that conversation, support national coordination mechanisms and processes. And the last point is to support ethical local recruitment, making sure that we use the human resources that we have at the local level. Thank you.
Great, Emmeline. Thank you very much for that. The 5 points of recommendations from your work with HAG as well. Those these vulnerable part of our society, existing issues, and the monitoring and holding state to account, advocacy for prioritization is also, I think it's a reminder that it is a power of network, something difficult for one individual organization to do, but with a collective network like yours, Piango, I think it's a value addition of such network activity. So, and yeah, so thanks for sharing that, Emmeline. Let's go to Yuko from Japan. So Japan platform, the specific challenges and some of the adjustments that you had to make, and in midst of this flooding and landslides that are happening in Japan right now. So what's your take, Yuko?
Yes. To answer the question, I'd like to share our experience from the current response, the disaster that we have in Japan. We have currently heavy rains and landslides, and also flood in city called Kumamoto in northern part of islands. In this disaster, the CSO network group is playing a significant roles to respond to these disasters. Not only responding the disaster, but they are also working as a coordination body among those CSO group, and also the government, and also not only the area CSOs group, but also with outside of CSO groups and NGO sectors as well. Japan platform is also decided to respond to this disaster, and we're also raising fund for this disaster. And yeah, by the way, we are probably can raise fund less than normal. I think this is also the challenges, because we also raising fund for COVID-19 program since April. So probably because of this, we have a lot of disaster on the program, we should raise the fund. So this time we probably have less donation for this one. So that's another challenge. But for CSO group, there's one CSO network group called KBOAD, Kumamoto Volunteer Organization Active in Disasters. This KBOAD is significant roles to those coordinations or the discussion with a lot of sectors. But this KBOAD has a history, and this was established in 2016 when we had earthquake in this Kumamoto city. So this time, and also before this Kumamoto earthquake in 2016, there's no coordination body or coordination mechanism in Japan. So, and also we have a lesson learned from the 2011 earthquake. So we all CSO group believe that we should have coordination mechanisms. So we NGOs and CS group get together and establish another coordination mechanism called the JBOAD. So JBOAD is the purpose is coordination of course, in those CSO groups in government. But of course, this is a national network group. So this is not enough to respond to each regional, those small disasters. So now this JBOAD is planning to have coordination networks in each 47 prefectures. So that's including Kumamoto. So Kumamoto was the actually first coordination body after JBOAD created. So Japan Platform and also other networks also supported this KBOAD for last 4 years, and Japan Platform also funded to this KBOAD for last 4 years. So we really hoping this KBOAD works. Well, that was established for, of course, in supporting this disaster and earthquakes recovery, but also this is a storage for prepare for next disasters. So this is really time to test, what we have invested works or not. But so far we see there have been working incredibly good work for that. However, I think it's been, we're talking about new normal, but before this disaster happened, our CSO net groups in Japan agreed if something happens in this, typhoon season, because of this COVID-19 situations, probably we don't fly to the, this region was probably old habits, but we're not going to do that. So just wait and see in this local networks, it's handle this one. And this time also KBOAD is issuing the statement that's please not to come this area and let us do our work and let it first. And if the disaster is too big to handle for them, and they will issue the statement again to ask for help. But until then, please wait to issue the go sign. So that's what they did. So other networks, including Japan Platform, is waiting to go that area or to help the KBOAD to see what's going to happen. So that's the things. However, unfortunately, there are still some groups that they want to really go that area because this heavy disaster is too big. Probably they cannot handle by them. Probably. So some people really wants to go there. So now we see there's some tension between those groups and KBOADs. So that's kind of difficult because another problem, and also KBOAD also dealing with those tension in the area. So I think it's important. I think this is advocacy in the beginning to make sure that all actors, including all CSOs, the government, has the same idea of new normals, because this is, probably Japanese version of localization. So if we believe this new normal, we all agree that it's let those local actors do their work first, and then other actors probably wait and see and what's going to happen. So it's a little bit difficult, because probably for us, it's just easy to just go fly and help them, but that's probably it's not requested from the local people. So now we're trying to see what's going to happen next. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Yuko. The fundraising challenge that you mentioned is similar to the challenge that Xiaofan mentioned from China also. But your experience of this local coordination body, KBOAD, and the 4 years of investment that you have made since the Kumamoto earthquake in 2016, I think it's paying off. And the lesson for us is that these investments work. But it does take that amount of investment to localize the system of disaster management. And so it tells us that we need to look ahead and prepare, invest our time and energy into such planning and preparedness activities. So thank you, Yuko, for sharing. Dr. Huat, in Bangladesh, so what's your take on this specific challenges and adjustments? You have mentioned a few before, but if you have things to add.
Yeah. So in Bangladesh, as the organization like DCH and other organizations who are mostly working in the field, we have, due to COVID and other multiple disasters at the same time, the flash flood and Amphan. So the most biggest challenge we have facing there is the fund crisis. It's a big crisis there, because almost all the program are rescheduled. I already mentioned most of the program rescheduled. But whatever we have done with the refugee, there's a lots of refugee, and they are totally dependent on donor fund. So if some fund are struck and due to COVID situation, it is very difficult to survive with these people. So in this situation, the COVID, when the refugee people, they are for their feeding, for their life support, for their treatment, for their medicine purpose, for their basic needs. So all the funds are all struck. So it is very difficult for us to continue with the limited resource that we have and use our own resource to continue the process there. And this is one of the biggest challenge. And another thing, almost all the funds that have created for the refugee camp, these are the emergency fund, and all the programs are for 3 to 4 months only. So every 3 to 4 months, we need to extend the project and make the proposal again and again. But due to COVID current situation, we have all these processes stopped. So that's why after the current program, all the situation program, all the organization need to extend the funding process. But that is the whole there. So funding crisis is a big situation there, and for this for the all the local NGOs we are working with, try to use our own fund to continue the process before this gone away. Another big challenge, the organization like DCH and other organizations, those who are mostly working on the field, and I already mentioned we have the third regional office there. So these activities need to we are very much concerned about the security of our staff, because in this situation, the field situation is very clumsy, and particularly in the refugee camp, it is very tough to work with in this environment, and that is not secured enough to prevent the pandemic there. So it is another big issue there. And we try to the multiple disasters that have happened in Bangladesh there, along with COVID, there's Amphan and the flash flood for the last 15 to 20 days. It makes that situation more worse, because the most of the fund that we have, we try to use in the refugee camp, but due to the especially the north side of our country, the flood situation is very worse now. So in this situation, we try to support even for the emergency response. We are not getting the enough fund there. So this is the things we are facing the biggest challenge in for now. And for the adjustment, we invest heavily on our staff security. And for the local staff security, we are providing enough support to all of them. And for the I already mentioned for this coping of this situation, it is no alternative to strengthen the local NGOs and not the local organization there. And because it's not possible for the center organization to work in all the areas, and for the monitoring and for the project implementation, we need to strengthen all the local, regional and local NGOs and local communities. So that it will cut down our cost also, field implementation cost also, and that will help the run out all the projects smoothly there. And for the monitoring, monitoring purpose, the INGOs and the civil societies that have they are already try to involve in the field, but it is not possible. I don't know how long it will take time, but we need to strengthen our communication strategy and build up our relationship with the donors and the local NGOs and strengthen the local NGOs. That will help the things there. So thank you, Takashi.
Thank you, Dr. Fuad. So Dhaka Community Hospital is already national, and from some INGOs, you'll be called as a local NGO, but you're saying more local, closest to the ground, so you need to strengthen that partnership. So thanks for sharing that. And yes, flexibility of donor funds is critical because it does reflect directly with the business continuity of services in places like the refugee camps. And you need to make those investments into staff security, and that needs to be taken into account in the donor funds also. So good point. And for those of us who work with the donor governments, I think that's a big advocacy message to take. Thank you, Dr. Huad. Okay, Anjar from Indonesia. So what are these specific challenges that you guys are facing and some of the adjustments that, that you might have made? Can you share with us some?
Sure, I'm just going to start off with something general, something that that was actually discussed by all the speakers. I'm sharing something that all of you or all of us are actually experiencing. So so I'm conveying some external issues here. One of the first external issues would be there is no clarity on the end of this pandemic. So so that is something that that is very difficult for us to adjust with, or at least this would then provide us with uncertainties on how we are to go about our business processes that has been established for years now. And then the next external issue would be the second waves that has been experienced by several countries. Xiaofeng from China has mentioned about waves happening, and while in Indonesia, before the first wave has set in, the second wave went on. So I guess it's a new breed of pandemic here in Indonesia. And so another issue that has also been discussed and impacted with the donors or through the mentioned earlier was the potential of global recession, closing of companies, of corporations, big corporations. We've seen this announcements of it and liquidations of several bankruptcies of several major brands, companies happening everywhere. Ones that were once donors for some of our works, and I'm not mentioning only Human Initiative. And the other would be, I'm just going to go through them, business adaptations. No, so we're not the only one doing the adapting or adjusting. I'm sure businesses need to do the same in order to survive, in order to maintain sustainability, and that needs time. And for them to eventually make new donations in time, they also need time to adapt to the changes, to the conditions that we are all experiencing now. And finally, the pandemic management in countries, which are somewhat or sometimes is very difficult to cope with, to live with. But these are some realities that then eventually provide us with constraints and room for creativity, and this is where we are supposed to come in and revive ourselves and put ourselves in our mandate of establishment in providing services to the people affected by this, which we are all affected. Now, so some of the what I just mentioned were external issues. These are some of the issues that we face internally. We are faced with project delays. A lot of project would have to be delayed because the nature of their work. It is against the protocol. We cannot do it. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we need to quickly find alternative ways, and we need to quickly talk to donors about it and how they would be they're willing to be flexible and accept a new way of doing it. And then this was also mentioned by all the other speakers, the potential of donation fatigue or decrease in donations. Or some of my team in the partnership division says this is a delay. Actually, this is a delay in their donations. They're incapable of they have the capability of donations, but the infrastructure stops them from doing this. Banks or international transactions are still limited, and so transactions are also constrained. Now that's is quite a positive view on the condition, but this is how we see this. Now, as an human initiative, as an organization who also depends quite a sizable amount of our yearly fundraising from retails, from individuals, we have quite a big problem of maintaining this, and so we needed to adapt some strategies in order to regain support in our work. So, and the other problem that challenges that we face, is maintaining our mandatories in the pandemic situations. The first phase of the pandemic or the lockdown almost or the majority of our work were stopped. But then we look back and see that we are supposed to be, we would also have to be on the ground. Security issue is a big problem, and then the protocol set in. We need to take on this problem, and thankfully we adhere to the protocol, and we took as much as we can to address or to help all that we can, and work together with the government's support in providing help to the most affected people. Now, some of the adaptation that we have been doing. Now, one of the major adaptation or adjustments that we did was setting up contingency planning. So we set up contingency planning by redesigning the organization's targets. Starting from expenditures, we are reorganizing expectations of what we planned we would achieve this year. In terms of donations, of course, then eventually we would then also reconfigure our expenditures, and then our targeted number of beneficiaries was also reconfigured, redesigned, and in order to maintain our work, our services, we did create a group, a team of research specialists to analyze the impact, the social impact of our donors and public. They were to see whether they still have the ability and the willingness to donate in this hard time. We were also surveying to see what are the sort of programs that they would like to see, and what would they think would be the preference of some of the services that we do. This is especially to get them involved and to get them be part of the work that we do. Thankfully, this connection that we do gain their support, and we did quite a lot of collaborations with our donors, which then become partners and then influencers through their social medias of our work, and gain more support. This was one of the adjustments. So some of the other adjustments that was conducted are policies. We created policies, of course, of protocols to all staffs in going to the office in order to limit the number of people going or being in the confined space in our office, and also protocols while serving the public in need. And then some of the other policies that we made is we quickly create what we call cross-functioning teams. These cross-functioning teams would then, what we call squad, they would quickly identify problems that we face during these hard times, and then they would then sort out the problems through designs of work and problem solving activities now. And then for that we invested in solutions that they come up with. So we created around 30 squads or 30 groups in finding solutions to problems and challenges that we face. This is actually an overwhelming solution to quite a lot of problems that we face, that I mentioned earlier as challenges that we face during this difficult time. And now, of course, something that and the last thing that I want to mention here is we are in the course of improving the protocols for a multi-disaster situation during this pandemic situation. I think those are some of the things that we face.
Thank you, Anja. Thank you. A lot of the questions that we've received prior to this webinar and also have been how to adapt practically to this new normal. And I think some of the experiences of your organization, Anja, I think can be a great reference for many. And on the fundraising front also, you've taken this opportunity to really strengthen the engagement of your supporters by asking them what do you want, and you reach out to them for further engagement. And I think that's really a great job. Well done. You also talked about need room for creativity, and I absolutely agree. Now, we are a little bit short of time, but we'll try to be a bit creative in the last part of this webinar. Obviously, everyone, while we listen to each of the speakers, we're grateful for the information that they share. And we realize that we actually have more questions than answers, probably. Everyone's struggling, but it's about forecasting what we need to do and break them down and deal with them. Last part of this webinar, we wanted to ask the speakers, although we have more questions than answers, we wanted to ask the speakers to give us a recommendation for colleagues in the region. I know it's not easy, and we're short of time. But let's do a quick sharing of what would you recommend our colleagues in the region from your experience. So let's go with Emily from Piango. So what are your recommendations?
Thank you. Because of the time, I would share only two recommendations. One is because what we have heard so far, that in the COVID-19 pandemic, in terms of our humanitarian response, with the Sendai framework, we have seen that mechanisms has already been in place in terms of the response. Civil society engaging with government, multi-stakeholder kind of platform to respond. But we had never seen any pandemic that the health sector has been the leading organization or the leading sector. And so that's where one of my first recommendation, that this is about the best time that we need to relook at the Sentai framework for disaster risk reductions. In taking that into consideration, making sure that our national policies are being reviewed, and to make sure that we had our experiences in our response reflected, because it's all any framework can always be look good, but in the translating that to local context, making sure that we had contextualize that to the local context. That's the first one. The other one is our humanitarian architecture. You know, the funding that whole development partners, their government towards a genuine humanitarian localization agenda is my second recommendation. Thank you, and thank you. It's quite interesting to be part of this conversation.
Thank you, Emmeline. Yuko, what are your recommendations?
Yes. Well, I think, well, because of this COVID-19 situation, and also we have more disaster and crisis, we cannot travel, and those movements our challenge. But I think it's one of the recommendation would be maybe like old schools, style things. It may be more conversation with your surrounding CSO networks, because as you see, I think there's a lot of experience and knowledge or insights in this region. So I think it's building relationship with other actors and having conversation is one of the key and probably one of the public solution or tools to solve the problem. So I think I really recommend it to more conversation, maybe in your countries and with others. And also, I also strongly recommend that maybe we have more conversation within this region. Yep, that's it.
Thank you, Yuko. Xiaofan, your recommendations?
I just realized that I didn't answer your question about specific adjustments. So I'll try to combine adjustments with my recommendations. Several points. First is adjustment is about when CSOs, they found there are a lot of restriction on travel, so they move their activities online, and they get familiar with this virtual meeting tours, and then after a while, they see the positive sides of this change. They don't need to pay for the travels, and that's more cost saving. And actually, you can save the time on commuting, so you can talk to people, convey people from different locations much easier compared with before. So I think that's leading to my one recommendation is to be open and agile, and trying to see the new to open to new technologies and tools and the new opportunities the new normal may bring to us. So not only see the negative parts, but also to see to embrace the new good sides. And that's the first one. Second one, about the adjustment. I think during this course, quite a lot of CSOs, they realize that the importance of cultivate their regular individual supporters. So for some CSOs, they heavily rely on fundings from government or from corporates or from some big foundations, whatever. So when this pandemic happens, and they may face serious financial problems, they make them and say that, oh, we need to put our eggs in different baskets, trying to build a more diversified funding base. So that's what another adjustment a lot of CSOs are doing. And also this also leading to my second recommendation is we have to be prepared for the worst scenarios and to diversify your funding base, and then to reduce the risk. And also, I think many others mentioned about the contingency plan is quite critical. So you have to work for the best, but plan for the worst. That's my second point. Last one is about adjustments, really about more from industry level. So this time we see in China that there are CSOs that are trying to make some joint voices to advocate to the government because of the worst situation. So they ask the government for some cut in tax, and also for delaying of they pay for their staff's social insurance. So governments will allow postponing of paying for this part, this kind of thing. And also there are Chinese NGOs, civil societies look at the Americans, for example, they issue the social bonds, and they trying to they also call for the leading donor organizations to be more flexible with their funding and to agree to provide core funding for organizations to keep them survive, to keep their life, keep their operating. So this I think is quite they help this whole industry to say, oh, what we can do and what we can do together. And this also leading to my last recommendation is when a big crisis happens, it's not you are not alone. I think CSOs should unite and should try to and get joint voices out. Over to Takashi.
Thank you, Xiaofan. Anzar, your recommendations?
Yes. Okay. Now, actually, I'm not going to say what has been said by the others. So I'm just going to cross out some of the things that Emlyn have said, Xiaofeng as well, and so I'm just going to say first. Is COVID-19 pandemic is an opportunity to strengthen collaboration across different sectors, structures, industries to strengthen the integrated and comprehensive actions of dealing with our work. I mean, so that's one. So. Collaborate. So that's basically what I'm saying there. The other thing is this pandemic health risks, all the risks that we face during this pandemic. This is an opportunity for transformative action towards improving a new and better healthy lifestyle. So this is the best way to promote a better healthy living lifestyles to all the people of our work, and then something that has not been mentioned would be psychosocial support is important, as some communities face multiple disaster impacts. So let's help the people go through this very difficult time. And lastly, to optimize the role of youth and young people and their innovative solutions to get us out of all this. That's it. Go ahead, Takeshi.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, Dr. Huat, what are your recommendations?
Yeah, there's lots of discussion with all the panelists. So I have just 3 or 4 words from my side. So one of them, my first recommendation is the focus on standard framework and strengthening and collaborating with the local organization. This is my first recommendation, to strengthen and collaboration with the local organization. Second thing for my side is the strengthening the relationship between the donors and local NGOs. So that will help the more flexibility of the donor organization for the implementation of the project in this situation. And third, my recommendation is more focus on the preparedness of the community people that will help them to survive in this tough situation. So we have to focus more on the preparedness on the community. And last, and for me, that's the make more provision for the emergency response by the civil sector organization. So we have to access more emergency response fund for this kind of situation. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Huat. And thanks to all the speakers. I realize it's not easy to come up with recommendations at this point in time when everyone is actually struggling. But I think you have shed a light. Appreciate that. We have received many questions before the webinar, and also we have received some during the webinar. We have looked through these questions. I hope some of the conversations and dialogues that we had during this webinar has touched upon what you intended to ask. One participant have asked also a question about what are the positive experience during this COVID? And I think some of you have mentioned rightly that, let's take this as an opportunity and not everything is negative. Some also asked us about, so in this new normal, so what are the different principles or policies, working instruments, individual attitude required? And I would like to use that question as a way to close this panel discussion. That first of all, this new normal, I think we've heard very clearly that it is a common risk, but from place to place may require different solutions, also targeting the different segments of the population. Effective response is always localized, and we need to support those who need to take the lead, whether that's a local authority or local organizations or community representatives. Those who are actually taking the lead to tackle these risks locally needs to be supported. I think that's very loud and clear. Now, this COVID-19 issue has been added to a multiple number of issues that the society already works on. So even if we talk about the new normal, it doesn't mean that the issues have changed completely. The issue has been added to the list that we already have. But the ways of response needs transformation. So I think our speakers have clarified in understanding the issue as well as the response. And not everything is negative. There are positive elements, like, some have mentioned a healthier lifestyle. This is an opportunity to also strengthen the relationship with your funders, with your colleagues, with those who are at the local level implementing their services to the people. In terms of principles, we heard that we need to have this multi-risk perspective. There's no other option. We can't just be looking at flooding risk or landslide risk or earthquake risk. The risks are multiple. And we need to look at with these multi-risk perspective, and also the principle of partnership in mind. And the specific investments that you make on partnership will pay off. And I think we've heard from the speakers that it actually does pay off. In terms of policy, I think there needs to be a coherence with localization in mind, and ways to adapt in this COVID era in terms of the working instruments. I think we've heard that breaking down these activities. Okay, so in your log frame or the project document, there may be one activity or two activities. Break them down and see what can be done online, offline, and what are specific risk reduction measures that you can introduce. Take this as a opportunity to do what's necessary. So in terms of individual attitude, I think we've heard that we need to have this positive narrative and this spirit of exploration. What can be done? See opportunities, and be clear on what you actually want to protect in this era. I think COVID-19 is a significant challenge that all of us are facing. But as some of the speakers have rightly mentioned, depending on how we deal with the challenges from COVID-19 pandemic, that will determine whether we'll be stronger in the region or not. So I would really hope to see this region coming together in tackling these multiple risks happening at the same time through this experience. And I think our individual actions and sharing like this will have that impact. I understand I have not summarized everything that you have said, but I would like to sincerely appreciate all the speakers of taking their time to share your very valuable experience and thoughts. And for everyone who have participated in this webinar, thank you for being with us. I would like to pass the floor back to the organizer. Dear?
Okay, thank you, Takeshi, for great moderation, and then thanks to all the speakers for your good practices and then inspiration. I hope that we had a very good discussion on that, and then the participants can also be inspired, and then there's a good dialogue happening around us in the region. So thanks everyone for joining us. I would like to brief you that we will have our next webinar. Can you please, HI colleagues, share the information on the PPT that we have prepared? So this is the first webinar that we will have on the general theme of CSO role and its sustainability in the new normal age. The next one will be held in 26th of August. So be prepared, everyone, for the next webinar on the next 1 month. And then we will have 4 other webinars as well until November and December. So stay tuned for our invitation and then information on the webinars. And then all the participants can also access all the materials from the speakers, and then what's happening around the discussion, and then also with the report on this webinar into our link that already shared in your screen. In the meantime, if you have any information or you would like to contribute to this webinar or being part of us as the organizer, please contact us via Rita Takuri or Halida. Their emails or their phone numbers already shown in your screen. So thanks to all participants, moderator, speakers, and then my beloved organizers for this great webinar. Maybe we can do a round of applause via online. So thanks for the great smile and then for the great spirit. Maybe we can turn on our video together to have a photo group via screenshot. Please host, help me on this. And maybe you can unmute yourself just to make some noise.
Hi.
Thank
you so much, everyone.
Thank you for all the speakers.
Okay.
I need to check with the host. Are we done? Are we done with the photo group? Maybe somebody can lead that on the host.
How do we do
This is the new normal too.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Are we done from the host?
Yeah, I think someone took picture of us. Did
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Okay, done.
There you go.
Great. So thanks everybody. Have a good rest of the day and stay safe. Please wear your mask. Please hand wash your hands. So thank you very much. See you on the next webinar.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Stay safe.
Singwi, Mas Hoya, thank you. Takeshi, thank you.
Thank you everyone.
Yeah, thank you.